Grief is one of those tricky dynamics that I honestly think is a thread in all of our recovery stories. We're all grieving something. Just thinking of just that message of understanding that the grief is what wasn't meant to be is, and that reality of that can bring up a lot of pain. But what does it look like to grieve the life that you didn't get? That posture of helping us understand some of the losses of people. Maybe it's parents or safety, or maybe even your innocence as a young child, or the grief that never, we're grieving the things that never were. Or maybe we're grieving God's nearness and our brokenness. What's some things that we can unpack in that posture? Today we're going to talk about grieving the life that you didn't get. Welcome to Celebrate Recovery Official, a podcast that shares life-changing stories, courage, hope, and leadership wisdom, all centered around the Beatitudes in Matthew chapter 5, where the Celebrate Recovery principles were birthed, where Jesus gives us a roadmap, starting with understanding that we must be spiritually poor as we face the hurts, the events in our life that lead to unhealthy hang-ups, and how we see ourselves, God, others, and circumstances that lead to some unhealthy coping strategies that have an effect on others and our relationship with God. Ultimately bring healing, new healthy truths, new healthy practices, and healthy community and fellowship with God. I'm a grateful believer in Jesus Christ. I struggle with drugs, alcohol, and perfectionism. My name is Rodney. I'm the Global Field Director with Celebrate Recovery. It's good to be back with you guys. Hope you're enjoying the podcast that we're throwing out there. Always love ideas. I'm trying to coordinate some schedules to get some interviews of life-change stories. I've had a couple of you email me. I promise I haven't forgotten about you. We'll get schedules lined up, and we'll hear a life-change story very soon to walk through together. But just thinking on this grief and grieving a life that maybe we thought we should have gotten, or we longed for in our life. And it's interesting when we think about this kind of grief, it's kind of hard to name, isn't it? I think sometimes when I think about this kind of grief, it can be really hard. But there is such an incredible healing that takes place in this path when we can spend some time just honoring that pain, when we can acknowledge grief over what happened. But sometimes we minimize grief over what never did happen. And not every loss has a funeral, and that is a part of it. But just the shattered dreams, even safety, a posture in my life, or a time in my life where I wanted to be nurtured or cared for or comforted, and I got dropped by someone in my life. Instability, not feeling secure. Those kind of things can really go unnoticed and probably unprocessed, and they have an effect on us. And so sometimes we can feel weird and feel guilty. I don't know how to put this into words, and we're afraid to speak those things. And here's one of the things that we'll find people doing is, well, I just need to suck it up, but it's not as bad as so-and-so's. And so we're afraid to honor that. And so we avoid it, or we just minimize it. We suppress it. And so grieving the life you didn't get, even though it's hard to name that, it's important that we name it, because those pain points have an effect on us. They do shape us. They do have play a part in how we view the world, how we view ourselves, God, and others. And so it's really kind of this posture, and the inventory process does help us with this. This is why I think if it's on your heart, share it, because it does become a catalyst for someone else's sharing, going, oh, I hadn't thought about grieving what I didn't get. I thought I would be married and have 6 kids by now or whatever. I thought I would be professional living in another country or whatever. I mean, it can be that kind of thing, or it can be something a little bit more practical. But identifying those things and saying out loud, especially when we're connected to the safety and the nurture and the specifically related to our attachments and someone that should have been there for me wasn't. And I started developing belief systems. And so what are the losses that don't require a funeral? Now, we got to grieve those too, but sometimes we minimize these other things. So it's really come in this posture of identifying those invisible losses, if that makes sense. So some of those overlooked losses that we can, and I kind of touched on that a little bit, but the parent that, again, we're not blaming. This is not shaming and blaming parents, but understanding. We can be honest about our story and still be honoring. We all are flawed. We may think we will be the perfect parent that our parent wasn't, but you're going to be flawed too. And it's just the reality. We live in a broken world. But so we're not blaming, but maybe it's a loss of a parent who wasn't emotionally present. Maybe you had a childhood that should have had safety and it didn't. You know, growing up in my home, I had a lot of broken people around me all the time. A lot of house parties. My mom had her own brokenness. She's been passed away for a while now, but some of the things that in her own brokenness that she exposed me to kind of created an unsafe environment. Some men and women around me that were not safe. And she didn't know that. I mean, I really believe if she fully knew that and had a reality of that, she would have done something different about it. But in her brokenness, she was oblivious to that. So maybe you have a childhood story or a childhood in general that just didn't have safety. Maybe it's even more severe and your innocence was lost way too early. Maybe you were exposed to something that turned something on inside of you that wasn't supposed to be turned on at that young of an age. It's like, ugh. Maybe you're grieving some overlooked losses of people, this version of life that people hoped God would give them. Maybe you hope God would give you this version, and it just didn't happen. This is real grief. And I think sometimes when we talk about our theology bumps into our humanness and our emotions, we will minimize that and say, I should be grateful. I had a good childhood. You're right. Be grateful for that. But that doesn't mean minimize the losses. That's real grief. That's a part of it. These are losses that don't have a funeral that follow them, but they're still losses. There's still something to be grieved. And so that is textbook real grief. So don't minimize that. What are some of those things for you that are overlooked losses, those invisible losses, something to think about? There is a cost in there. When we don't acknowledge this kind of grief, it starts to kind of come out sideways. And that's where we'll see toxic anger or numbness or shame. Maybe we'll see an addiction. We'll see just kind of this chronic resentment, bitterness, dissatisfaction with life. What we will not pay attention to and we talk about this in the inventory process. There's healing in the revealing. What we don't grieve, we'll carry in our bodies. And I think it's one of those things that we overlook, that there's a lot of things we equate grief with physical loss, and that is a big thing. Let me say that again. When we lose loved ones, it's a big thing, and it's not to minimize that. But sometimes we will equate that as the full definition of grief. There are other facets of grief that we can't ignore. So if we don't grieve it, we'll often kind of carry that in our bodies, and it gets stuck. And what we're trying to do is to acknowledge the buried grief, so it doesn't show up and come up in sideways and get stuck in us, so that we just carry it in our body and it just shows itself in different ways. So I'm going to take a super quick break. When we come back, we'll continue just this different angle on grief and make sure that we understand that there's sometimes losses that don't have a funeral that follow it, and why it's important to grieve those real grief moments as well. Stick with me. I'll be right back to continue the conversation. Hey friends, we've got the West Gathering right around the corner. If you'd like to be, the summit is sold out on the East Coast in Tennessee, but we've got the West Gathering. You get the same main stage talks, the great inspirational, life-giving talks to feed your soul, your team's soul. Get your team together. Join us in California for the West Gathering for an incredible time. 2 days of incredible content that will feed your soul. Go to celebraterecovery.com for more ticket information. All right, so grief is so important that we pay attention to. There's oftentimes we get confused and we box it in to certain kinds of grief, and it's bigger than that. So there is a cost that it will show up when we have unacknowledged, organized grief. It will show up in different ways. It's such an important thing. One, we have to remove the stigma. It's like, well, that's not grief. No, that's grief. But as we do, give yourself permission to grieve what never was. That's so important. We have to kind of pay attention and address this kind of internal resistance that we have happening inside of us. This is that minimizing it. Well, others had it worse. I should be over this. In grief in general, and I've said this before, but a friend of mine, when I was going through grief, loss of my mom, 17, 18 years ago, I think. Yeah, it's been a while now, but I remember the first full year and a half, it just felt like the tears just kept coming. And I went and talked to him, and does the grief ever change? And he had lost his wife, his son, many bouts with cancer. I mean, just went through a massive amount of grief and loss. And I'll never forget what he shared with me. He said, Rodney, there's two circles in grief. One is get over it, and the other circle is grow through it. We are going to try to tell ourselves through those messages, I should be over this. What we're saying to ourselves, get over this. Or we think, man, time has passed. What are you whining about? Shouldn't you be over this? We're presuming that's what the world is saying, and maybe people even say that. He said, where you need to be is in this other circle, grow through this. Grow through this. While it is a truth to God should be enough. And that's true. But the reality is when we're bleeding, to just say God's enough and not allow him in, not to acknowledge the pain so that he can do what God does as the almighty, all-powerful, all-knowing God that he is not God's design. To say he's enough and not acknowledge the loss is to rob myself of a big part of who I am and my relationship with him. So I want to invite other people into that. And I want to encourage you, if you're grieving something that never was, or should have been and isn't. Can I just encourage you to maybe change your definition? Grief, look at grief with honesty and honestly. Don't look through the lens of weakness. Give yourself permission through courage to allow yourself to feel and reveal what is hidden in your heart. Now, you owe that to yourself. And that's the thing with, in the scriptures, Lamentations, book of lamenting, but we see this through the Psalms, this principle of lamenting. And lamenting is such an important, it's a healing practice. It's not a lack of gratitude. It's just honoring who we are. And again, our theology will bump into our pain, and we'll use it to weaponize against ourselves. That's a misuse of the scripture. You could almost say it's a little bit of a spiritual abuse. While it makes sense, we'll go back to losing someone physically. Well, they're in heaven. At least they're in heaven. Well, that doesn't land for my heart if I'm bleeding. We know the truth, and the theology side is something we will get to, and we want to hold on to that theology. But I got to allow myself to lament. And lamenting is just the expression of sadness and sorrow before my theology comes into play. So this principle is a biblical principle. It's a way as faith followers to have a faithful response in naming our pain in the presence of God in safe community without over spiritualizing it, without trying to fix it. Well, at least you have another kid. Well, that's trying to fix it, and that's over spiritualizing. Well, God's still in control. God's not going to waste this. Okay, yeah, that's true. But right now, I just need to express it and name the pain so that God can heal and put salve on that wound so that I can bring healing to that. Scriptures, all through the scriptures, we see this through the Psalms, always make space for our pain and our sorrow. Even for anger, tears. Praise is a part of that. But I think part of that is if we go to just gratitude and thanksgiving without allowing yourself to feel tears and sorrow, our praise can feel empty. And I need to feel the weight of that and invite God. The one I'm praising is the one that's meeting me in my tears and my sorrow. But if I don't show him my tears and sorrow and grieve what never was, then I'm not bringing my true, authentic self. Now, we don't want to get stuck there, but we got to acknowledge it so that we can grow through that. And that's so important. Remember, all through the scriptures, God has incredible desire to be near to you and I in our brokenheartedness. He's not disappointed by your pain. He's not disappointed by your grieving of what never was. He's present in it. He wants to be with you in it. God meets us not in the life that we wish we had, but in the pain that we're carrying because we don't have that, and the pain that you're actually carrying, and what he wants to do is bring comfort in that pain, and grief, the healing path of grief. We have to be honest about where we are. Grieving the life you didn't get is allowing yourself to feel, and it releases you and I, if we're in that season, from this kind of self-criticalness, this self-blame, this unrealistic expectations. I shouldn't be feeling this. I should be past this. God should be enough. And we're not allowing. Now we're trying to play God with our pain, and we're in an unhealthy space. Grief will never change the past. That's why we don't ever get over loss, but we can grow through our loss. It can soften this tight grip that it has on us, and open up space for a new path, a new recovery journey, a new pathway to peace and life that we talk about in the Serenity Prayer. It's softening that grip. We don't get over it, but we grow through it. And the way we grow through it is to honor what comes forward, which includes grieving what never was, what we wanted, the life we wanted and we don't have, just to be honest. And we may find as we grieve it, maybe it wasn't as big as we thought, but right now in the moment, it feels like just a lot. And what we're trying to do, and by the way, this is the Celebrate Recovery process. We're grieving some of those pain points of security, fractures and losses of someone that should have been there, someone that should have been there for us emotionally to support us or whatever. That is a process of Celebrate Recovery, as we're grieving all of that as we speak it out loud and invite God and other safe community into that. But we're not bypassing the pain to get to hope. And we can hold truth. We can hold this space. God, you're still in control, but it's okay for me to feel what I'm feeling. God can redeem what you lost or what you never had, the shattered dreams. But here's the thing, and this is so important. This is why time is a part of the process, talking about it, allowing truth into those conversations, sometimes tears into those conversations. God can redeem what was lost. But it doesn't require us rushing past that just to get over it. We don't want to rush past that grief, just like we wouldn't rush past the grief of loss of a loved one. Healing often begins when we stop pretending. We stop pretending that we didn't lose something. We're dishonoring a part of our heart. No, I lost something, and I'm hurting, and I need to be honest about that. So I don't know what is a loss that you're wrestling with. Is it something that never was? Is it are you minimizing some losses of parents, interactions, safety, your innocence, or some of those things like that version of life that you hoped God would give you? It's okay to acknowledge that. Don't shame it, and don't allow yourself to buy into that narrative of I should be over this or God should be enough. Is show yourself some kindness. Romans 12. I just lost the passage. No, it's Romans 2. Sorry, it is God's kindness that leads to repentance. You could say change, healing, growth. If that's God's strategy for you, why not adopt and adapt that same strategy for yourself? What would it be like to show yourself kindness as you grieve and honor the pain that never was? What would that be like? What would it be like to show compassion and care to yourself in saying it makes sense? How does it make sense that you're grieving that you needed a parent to be with you in a really hard season as a child and they dropped you? Because we're all broken, and we've probably done it with our kids, to allow ourselves to grieve it. And I hope my kids grieve the times that I've let them down as parents, because I know I have. I'm flawed as just like anybody else. It would make me sad if they minimized it. I'd rather they grieve it than hold it on to themselves and hide it in silence. Grieving is much more than something that follows a loss with a funeral. We gotta grieve that too, but sometimes we gotta grieve what never was, or what we had dreams for, shattered dreams, and things that are breaking our heart because of things that have happened in our past. And it's just as important as any other kind of grief. That's real grief. That's a faithful expression and discipline to put into words and express that kind of grief. It's a part of the process. So if you're struggling with that, take some time, put that into words, organize it, share it with a brother in open share it with a sister in that step study, share it with your sponsor, whatever. Talk about it and honor. It's okay to feel what you're feeling. Just don't try to face it alone. No matter what you're facing in your life, God's got you. He's close to the brokenhearted. He saves those who are crushed in spirit, and that includes you. Hope this blessed you. Thanks for being with me. I pray that you'll join me next time. Until then, God bless you guys.